So welcome to today's podcast. Thanks for joining me. I'm really appreciative of everyone who's listening. I hope you're getting some value out of all these podcasts. And I try to bring on some really interesting guests so you can benefit from their journey, their experience, and their wisdom. So today I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm with Jermane Cheathem. He's the founder of Creators Learn. You're going to get a lot, I think, wisdom out of him and maybe get envious of his lifestyle. It's pretty cool. But he's a lot of background in sales, finance, and certainly he's with his Creators Learn, really helping a lot of sales folks and entrepreneurs really adopt the right mindsets and strategies just to win at life and get the freedom they want. So, Jermane, thanks for joining me today.
Great to be here, Tom. Thanks for having me, man.
That's awesome. So that's why before we got on this started this recording, I know asked you where you were, which I assume you might be somewhere in the States, but you're not. So where are you?
Yeah, so like we were saying, I'm in this small little island on the east coast of Brazil called Florianopolis. So beautiful weather, very tropical, very Amazonian, mountains and tarantulas, and I just found a nest of owls. I didn't know owls lived on the beach,
What?
uh, but yeah, so it's beautiful out here. It's great.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, this time of year, the time of recording, the closest anyone gets to Amazon is the shipments that get dropped at their house. So you get to see actually the real Amazon. So it's fun. That's awesome. So I know, so this gives you the audience members a little hint. I mean, Jermaine's living a life that he's creating with him and his partner, trying to live a life that gives them the most fulfillment, and they've done it intentionally. So I'm going to cover a bunch of that. So before getting into anything business wise or any of that, so tell us a little bit about your background. You have an interesting background, and certainly working at jobs and finance and kind of how it took you to where you are today.
Yeah, everything really changed for me when I started playing sports because up until that point, I was very reclusive. I didn't really do things with other people. I was this kind of, at least I felt this way, that I didn't really explore life. I didn't explore what I was capable of. I didn't really compete.
Hmm.
And sports gave me that opportunity to start competing, not against the opponent, but against myself. And I really just used sports as a catalyst for me to look around the world and find other opportunities for me to compete and for me to get better. And that's kind of how I've always framed life, as challenges, not to necessarily win or lose, but just to play.
Yeah.
And when you turn everything into play, not only you cannot lose, but also it lowers the resistance to actually doing the thing because it just becomes fun.
No, that's great. And I look at my kids as they're growing up, and they're getting into sports too. I played sports all my life and loved it, and I still have such fond memories of it. But it was fun. It's freeing, and you can explore. And whether it's life or finance, it's treat it like a game, and it's not even that make it as serious as we can tend to make things, right? You can actually enjoy it.
Well, and
And
also one of the first things you notice about sports when you start playing it is you not only get aware of what you're good at and where you excel, because self awareness is so important, but also you realize who are your other teammates, who are your opponents, what are they good at, what do they excel. So you
yeah,
can, if they're teammates, then you can hopefully get them in situations where they can actually win. If they're an opponent, you can figure out strategically how you can beat them. So it's like it's not only you growing through sports and challenging yourself, but also understanding the greater world through the lens of sports. So there's so many benefits of playing sports as a youth.
yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into some of those sort of analogies as it relates to life and business and for sure. So, so you're an entrepreneur now. Did you always have that in your sort of DNA? Like kind of how did you kind of get started in just the kind of adulting life?
Well, when I first got started, I was like, okay, let me get a job, right? Because I needed money. And but I still butted up against this fear of rejection. I still butt it up against this fear of, not being enough, not being liked, not being accepted, not being skilled. And I always challenge myself, and I challenge these fears to see if they're really true. And the best way for me to challenge these type of fears for me was to go into sales, because sales is
Hmm.
going to give you instant feedback and how you're doing. Are you a good communicator? Are people wanting to work with you? And that was kind of the first place I cut my teeth. So, I did landscaping services. I sold shoes. I did door to door sales. I did all different types of sales. And then I landed in financial services sales. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. I love learning about money, but I'm not really a numbers guy. I'm a
Mm.
people person. And I'm all very, very curious about people. So with financial services, it's a direct sale, and you're dealing with people directly. And 99% of it isn't finance, it isn't numbers, it's just relationships. And I've learned that through my career that the only people that buy from other people. They don't buy from companies. So your integrity and how you show up and your consistency and what you say and what you do have to be completely aligned. Otherwise, people are not going to trust you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing in sports. Like if your teammates don't trust you to execute on what you're good at, then you're not going to get the ball or you're not going to be put in that position to win. So, I never really wanted to be people facing, even though I knew it was my strong suit, because I had immense amounts of fear, of rejection, of all the stuff us humans go through. But the only way to break through that is staring it right in the face. And you realize by, challenging these things, it was all a mirage. And the worst thing to do is get to the end of your life and realize you lived your life in a mirage and you didn't even test. Now, life's an experiment, it's just a bunch of tests.
Yeah.
In experiments, there's no right or wrong, it's just data. So that was kind of my first professional experience with sales and finance. And, you know, ultimately, my driving force has always been freedom. And the ultimate freedom is mental freedom. But you only get there through there's levels. There's levels to freedom. And some people I think want to get to mental freedom without doing anything. Like I'll just meditate my way to freedom, or I'll do cold baths and it'll get me free, or I'll journal my way to freedom. But real freedom is done in the doing, in the action, in the experimentation, in the actual experience. And that is really where I wanted to start my career. And I knew that for me to ultimately get the freedom that I really wanted, which is financial, time, location, and mental, I had to become an entrepreneur. I can't work for somebody. That's not freedom.
Yeah.
So I knew it was on the docket. I didn't know when I would be ready, but you know when you know. And some people have to have a diagnosis or be fired or get divorced to be pushed over the ledge. That's easy. It's harder when you have something perfect, but you can make it better by doing it on your own and figuring out your own way. And it's hard to leave something that's really, really good. But if you can make something magical, you got to do it. Because when you're 90 years old on that deathbed and you're thinking about what you could have or couldn't have done and why you didn't, it goes back to like, did you stare that demon in its face? Whatever that demon might be for you.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff, and you're speaking to the choir here because I just like you went through that same sort of mental sort of discussion with myself, taking a look at the future and say, what would I regret? What would I regret not doing and trying? I could stay in my cushy job, quote unquote cushy job, which we know is not absolutely secure. You'll see it now, as a lot of companies are starting to reorganize and downsize and potential recession. Who knows? But what would you regret not doing or trying and pushing yourself? And it's a challenge. And so for those who are listening that are maybe thinking about that, I mean, know that it doesn't come without sort of facing some sort of challenges, and just got to know that going in. So for you, Jermaine, when you were going through it, and what helped you kind of sort of bridge that over? You knew for yourself that you weren't this was not the spot for you, this job, even though you were learning stuff, learning sales. But what really helped you kind of mentally kind of get over that hurdle and start kind of going down to the life of the freedom that you kind of live today?
Everything really changes once you have a crystal clear vision of how you're going to be in the future, but you live it presently. So even though I was an employee, I acted like I was an owner. I conducted my business like I owned the business.
Mm,
I dealt with my clients like they were actually buying from me as an individual owner. So it first begins with ownership. And it has to do with this idea of you got to have a vision of how you not only want to create something in the future, but also how do you want to create today? Like, how do you want to show up today in this moment talking to you? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be playful? Do you want to be serious? Do you want to have fun? Do you want to just be open? Whatever it is. So I think so many of us go through our lives just completely reactive
mm,
and no intention. And for me, creating an intention for how I was going to exit, how I was going to leave, when I was going to leave was really important because life is long. And I think sometimes we act in haste. And I believe that the more you slow down, the more fruit you can taste. And so I'm very deliberate in the moves I make. So there's no reason to rush. There's no reason to do something out of a knee jerk reaction. And so you have to kind of let the pain of the situation you're in build until the point where you mark it on your calendar. Today's the day I leave. Today's the day I start this business. I'm going to give this new business 90 days and then I'll re-examine after that. But, if you don't give yourself adequate time and do something consistently, you're not going to have the data to inform you what should be the next step. It's one step at a time. You can't be looking at step 100 when you're still in step 1.
yeah. Yeah, and for me personally, as an overthinker, and you want to go out there, people want certainty. I think about financial lives. Why everyone is forecasting things, and you talk to 10 economists, they'll give you a different answer. Well, people want certainty. Well, how do you do that? You make these sort of educated guesses, and so you feel good where it's going. But as you're describing the entrepreneurial world, there is no certainty, and you got to embrace that, right? And recognize you're probably going to have to pivot, reevaluate. But if you don't move forward at all, you're just gonna, with no action is a decision, right? You can just stay where you are. So through the course of your journey with, you know how long did it take you from, say, making that decision and to actually starting the business and getting going? Did you kind of do that while you were working at your job, or how did that transition happen for you?
Well, it really was a very natural progression because what I was doing in my financial services business is just talking to people. Because for me, sales is so simple as long as you're selling a simple product and there's no coercion. I have nothing to sell you on. I'm not trying to, like, either you like me and you want to do business with me or you don't. There's no bells and whistles to the product. So for me, it was a natural progression because when you have sales, it's stupid to work for somebody else
Mm,
because you're doing 80% of the heavy lifting. So for me, really, it was just a matter of me putting it on the calendar of, okay, that's the day I'm going to leave, and getting myself prepared mentally for this marathon of entrepreneurship. And it's also, I think, it's important to make sure your house is in order before you leave any business. If someone has given you an opportunity to learn something, to grow, to build, I think you owe it to them to be respectful about how you exit. And so I spent time nurturing those relationships and really trying my best to become friends with my coworkers because I have gratitude for the opportunities they gave me. And so I think it's like you owe a level of respect to people before you leave. And I think a lot of people do take a bad angle with that, and they just leave without any notice or don't even tell you what they're doing. So again, it goes back to my philosophy of take your time. There's plenty of time, and you can build whatever you want in 12 to 36 months. So what's the rush? The funny thing
Right.
about it is also, I always feel like everyone wants to go to the top of the elevator, but once you get to the top, it's not that much fun because then where do you go from there? And the smartest thing to do, if I was ever going to give anybody advice, is just start at the first floor and then go to the second floor. Because then, as you make your progression up to the top, you actually enjoy the entire process. And it actually gets incrementally better and better and better. Because once you get to, if you just try to go right to the top at the very beginning, everything below the top is miserable because you know what the top is like. So I don't know. That was kind of a rant, a long-winded response to your question. But when you know you're ready, you'll know you're ready. You can't fake desire. You can't manufacture desire. You can't read a book to desire. You can't have a coach you to desire. Either you want it badly enough and you'll jump off the ledge, or you won't. And that's just the facts.
Yeah, and a lot of it too. To your point, it's patience with ourselves, and what's that sort of phrase? It's like you be probably underestimate what you can get done in 5 years, but you overestimate what you can get done in a year, right? Type of mentality. We want everything to happen so immediately, and when it doesn't happen as quickly, you can get frustrated and down on ourselves, and maybe even quit, right? But to your point, like if you can take it as this is part of the journey, enjoy it, you're improving, you might turn around 5 years from now and like, oh my God, how did I get here? Right? Whether it's
Yeah,
your
and
mindset.
a
Yeah.
lot of it also is unexpected because you can map out the perfect plan for where you want to go, but many things happen unexpectedly. I didn't expect to be traveling the world. This was never in my plans. I wanted freedom, but I thought I would just go to Cancun 3 times a year for vacation. I didn't think I'd live around the world. So you don't know what opportunities are going to open up for you once you start taking that first step, and uh, that's why the path is never clear until you start taking those first steps. So just take the first step.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And those are wise. And one of the things as I was looking through a couple of things that struck me, obviously the trying to keep it simple. I think that's smart, right? Whether it's sales and life, sometimes we can overcomplicate things. So just focus on one or two things to kind of progress the ball forward, to use the sports analogy, right? Don't try to solve everything at once because you probably can't, right? So just be good with sort of motion and progress and not perfection, which is sometimes easier said than done. But it's also you talked about too from a team perspective and leverage. I know you use the word leverage quite a bit, and it's one that actually my wife hates that word. I don't know why. Like we talk about a financial word like leverage and debt, which can be dangerous, but leverage used in a positive way can be really good. So, can you talk a little bit about that from your perspective, how you use leverage in your business career, your life, and how that's really helped you sort of maybe reach levels that maybe you never thought you could?
Yeah, a lot of people think leverage is a bad word because they don't understand what it means. Leverage just means you put a little in, you get a lot out. And this can apply to people, to situations, to technologies. It can apply to everything. And so with my business, initially, I was spending too much time with one-to-one transactions, just wasting
Mm,
my day, wasting my life. And sure, you can get results that way, but it really isn't, again, leveraged. Until I figured out I could just partner with people that are closer to my ideal customer than I can ever be, and they already have their trust. So then they bring me into the deals, and there's no friction, and I get 90% of
mm,
my time back. They just sign. And so that's when I first started using that leverage in my financial services business. But it applies to really everything. For example, Airbnbs are an awesome leverage point for me because I travel around the world. I don't have to worry about where to stay, getting furniture, paying the electrical bill, paying the water bill, paying the cable bill, paying the internet bill. I don't do anything. I just give them some money. I show up and I live. Like I get all my time back. There's no plumbing issues. I have to find a plumber. There's no, I got to fix the stove. I don't have to do anything, nothing. And so my whole goal in life is to do whatever I have to do so I don't have to do anything because I love it. I love finding leverage points. So I call it my MVP model, most valuable partners. So I'm always on the lookout for MVPs that can bring me my perfect client. And I always stress this to my students is like, look for MVPs and use resources. And one of the most underused resources that most people don't utilize is LinkedIn. Like if
Mm,
you're in sales or B2B sales, it's like, it's so easy to find MVPs on there, leverage it, and you get 90% of your time back while you multiply your income. So I'm always thinking from that lens of leverage. And some people call it simplicity. Some people would call it multiplying your income in less time. Whatever you're going to call it, it works.
absolutely. No, I'm a massive sort of supporter of it, whether it's your point networks or partners or, somebody else's money, right? We talk about that kind of stuff all the time on the show. And ironically, I saw an article recently, and unfortunately, that guy, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner in crime, like unfortunately, he passed away. And before he passed away, he said Berkshire Hathaway would have double the value if they could actually leverage it. But they were worried about their shareholders and what that would potentially hurt them in some way. So they didn't. But they say they would double the value of that organization if they didn't need to do that, right? And they could leverage it. So I know that's a financial arm, but then that's what's kept them down. Like imagine it's such a successful organization without it, what it could have been, what it could be. And that's a kind of example of what you're talking about, whether it's our business and our lives, buying back time, right? All those great things. Leverage is so to me very important in life. The other thing that I saw was I think we're aligned, and I think this gets is underappreciated in a lot of ways, and kind of I'm going to flip it is you mentioned stuff around gratitude, and how it could be you call it the fuel for entrepreneurs. Like, tell me more about that. Like, what's that mean?
Gratitude is fuel for entrepreneurs, salespeople, anybody in general, because it comes back to really one word, which is appreciation. And speaking about Charlie Munger, is I have a lot of appreciation for not necessarily what he did, but how he shared it. A lot of people do things that are amazing, but you never hear about it because they don't share it. He
Mm,
shared everything he learned. And so when you think about his lessons, like I was listening to a lesson he had the other day about inversion, invert every problem. Look at the opposite. And so he was saying when he was little, his grandfather would say, "Hey, you can swim as long as you want, but just stay in the shallow end." And his whole point was always look from the lens of what you don't want to happen. You don't
mm,
want little Charlie to drown. So what's the best way to make sure little Charlie doesn't drown? You don't swim in the deep end. You only swim in the shallow end. And so think about your business from that lens is what would you do to make your business fail? Well, I wouldn't reach out to anybody. I wouldn't use LinkedIn. I wouldn't find an MVP. I wouldn't take any action. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do the podcast. I would just sleep in bed all day and I would read books all day, but wouldn't do anything. Like if you invert things, and this goes back to the appreciation for Charlie, is it makes you look at things from a different lens. And so when you think about gratitude from a different lens and appreciation from a different lens, it literally makes your entire life more exciting and wondrous. Because just think about our lives in 2023. I'm talking to you, I'm in Brazil, you're probably somewhere in the States. I don't know exactly where you're at, but we have this technology that I didn't have to create. I spent a couple bucks on it and I get to do this. Like, what Zoom is $10 a month, $30 a month, whatever. If you think about the phones we have, the food, the drinks, the Airbnbs that I didn't have to build.
right.
So my point is when you walk around the world and you look at butterflies and trees and the ocean, you just get to enjoy all this shit for free, basically. If you're in essence for free. And if you're not utilizing it to help other people with things you've learned, then you're not expressing appreciation for the things you were given. And so my point is, gratitude and appreciation just makes taking action so much easier, because it's not about you. It's about what you can give because you were given so much, but you're not even aware of all the blessings that you have at your fingertips. I mean, for God's sakes, clean water runs out of our sinks in our kitchens. And 100 years ago, they had to drink beer because the water was so bad. So it's like, come on, guys, like complaining and like it's just I have an allergy towards victims, because everything you want is created. You create your entire life experience. It just depends on what you want to look at.
Yeah, it's so spot on, man. It's crazy. I was thinking about it earlier this week, and my wife hears this, she'll probably kick me in the ass a bit, but she's one who doesn't love cooking, and I get it. It's okay. Like not everyone has to love cooking because it's time consuming, whatever. She doesn't enjoy it, and that's no problem. But she was somewhat complaining. Oh, I have to plan for the week. Like, what am I going to cook? And then I did, to your point, did the opposite. Said how grateful we have. We can choose what we get to eat. It's endless, right? The amount of options we have. And I said, how grateful is that? How lucky are we? And I said, so it was amazing to think, even in that little moment, I said, she's stressed out. And I'm like, I was kind of the opposite. I'm like, we can choose whatever we want. How lucky are we? And not everyone has that. And so a lot of it is the framing and the perspective, like and everything we do from our business, our lives that are, we have control over that. It's our choice. I truly believe that. And so I think what you're talking about allows people to do that, whether their business is not doing well or not. Today, what I do know is things change all the time, for better or for worse. And so we just have to kind of, hopefully endure it or, you know, wait for the tide to kind of change and try to enjoy it. So it's really powerful stuff that you shared there. One of the last things as you're kind of wrapping, this is really cool stuff. Is you're sharing bits and pieces of what you help sales folks or entrepreneurs sort of deal with. So who are those types of people that you would typically connect with? Who you're helping, right? Because I want to connect them with you for sure. But like, who are those types of people now? Like, that you're typically working with these days and helping sort of find that freedom. Like, who are these people?
Yeah, so most of the people I work with directly are consultants and coaches that
Mm,
either have courses, have platforms, or actually sell something tangible. And what I do is, or a service. And then what I do is work with them to understand who their client is and how to leverage MVPs.
mm.
So their MVPs sell to the client instead of them selling to their client. And we use primarily LinkedIn as that leverage point to do that.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and to your point, and I think that's why sometimes it's the saw this one time. It was something. It's really powerful when someone can take something that's somewhat complex and simplify it, right? Like the way you're describing it. There's a lot that probably goes into it, right? Probably, but the simplicity of how you described it is what I like, because we can easily overcomplicate things. So for coaches or consultants or I guess even solopreneurs in some shape or form, right? That's always a challenge to connect with their ideal clients, right? So this is a way you can help them through because you've found success even for your own business using these sort of strategies.
Yeah, I noticed that most entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, consultants, coaches, whatever you want to call them, is they struggle with product market fit and lead generation. Because if you have a product or a service, you can find it to fit any market but you have to find the right market. And
Yeah.
so many times the way they are going about it is just backwards. And I just help them get clarity on the best way forward, the easiest way forward, and the most simple way forward. Because complexity makes people paralyzed. They just don't do anything. And so I am a proponent of being a minimalist as an entrepreneur. Do as little as possible so you can leverage whatever you are doing to the most efficient and effective outcomes you want.
No, that makes tons of sense. And so before I start wrapping this up, and I do always want to, I truly believe in sort of balance in life, and I suspect you would agree with that. In this world, whether it's our health or our spirituality or our mental state, and certainly our business and financial world, I think there's opportunity to build wealth in all of them, right? In abundance in all areas. Like, so outside of what's happening, you're obviously traveling a lot. Is there anything that sort of more recently you found more abundance in, or are seeking to grow it, right? That now is more intentional for you, whether it's your life, your health, whatever it is. Like, is there any areas that you're really hyper focused on in building more wealth?
I don't believe in balance. I think it's a word that people throw around that sounds nice, but I don't think it's a real thing in actual practice. I believe in doing whatever the hell you want to do that you want to do that you enjoy doing, whatever that might look like. And if that means working 16-hour days, then work 16-hour days. If you love it, then do it. If you want to work 3-hour days, then work 3-hour days and then figure out what you want to do for the other 21 hours, right? So I don't believe in balance, but what I do believe in is experimenting to find opportunities to grow more wealth, like you were saying, whatever that wealth might be, because there's different ways to be wealthy. I don't believe financial wealth is that's like the first rung of the ladder, as far as I'm concerned. And so what I've been experimenting with is a couple things. I'm a kind of a weirdo because I do all types of weird stuff. I always do these little experiments. So number one is I'm experimenting with just waking up in the morning. I usually get up around between 4:30 and 5:30, just naturally, and getting to work on my highest priority thing within the first 3 minutes. So literally, my eyes are still barely opening up, but I notice that I'm able to knock out within that first 90-minute block so much stuff that typically I would have a lot of resistance to getting
Mm,
started doing. But since it's so early and I literally just roll out of bed and open the laptop and get started, the resistance is so low because I'm still waking up. Like
yeah,
I'm still in that brainwave of sleep. So there's no resistance. So before I know it, 30 minutes go by and I'm already in flow. I'm already getting stuff done that I know is important. So that's one thing. Secondly, I'm really trying to build intentionally a community of people that think the way I think, that want to build their business the way I built my business. And, and the only way for me to do that at scale is through social media. And I was never on social media prior to last year, I'd say. And so that is another way for me to build wealth is have a community of people that I can connect with, I can help. And the only way for me to do that is to come out of the shadows and be on social media, be on YouTube, be on LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn I've always been on, but LinkedIn is more of a targeted approach. It's surgical, but I mean actually, being in front of the camera on these platforms, and it would be silly for me not to be there. It'd be silly for me not to be connecting with like-minded people, and so I'm finding that is giving me a different level of wealth, a sense of community. Where typically I'd always find community within my clients, but now it's not as transactional. It's kind of interesting. So those are kind of the two things that stick out in my mind. Is like, how can I again make this simple, easy, and fun? And I find those two little ideas that I'm playing with seem to be fitting the bill pretty well.
that's great. No, yeah, and just like you, I probably get energy being around people who are like minded, and it's you almost sometimes feels like home, right? That type of concept, you just kind of know it fits, and being around that is powerful. So thanks for sharing that. So, Jermaine, I really appreciate all your time, your wisdom, and sharing some of your personal stories and philosophies. And so, how best for folks to kind of get in touch with you, learn more about you and what you offer, or just to get to know you and want to be part of your community?
Yeah, the best place is creatorslearn.com. They can get my freebies there, or you can find me on socials. I'm on all the platforms. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, I would say. And shoot me a message. Get my freebie. It kind of takes you through some of the stuff we talked about, which is a lot of mindset set stuff, a lot of like, what are you selling exactly? So if you want these freedoms, financial, time and location, and mental freedom, we got to get real clear on what you're selling. Because if you pick the wrong what, it's kind of tough to get those
Mm,
freedoms. It's going to be a longer journey for you. And then secondly is, who are you selling it to? This goes back to the MVP model. Is you remember, you want to sell to partners that have your client already in their realm of influence, and how you go about doing that. So I go through that kind of model, and I think it's just important, if you have the right foundation of your mindset, your vision, why you want to do it, and then you figure out, okay, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? And how am I going to sell it? Everything else is super easy. But most people don't do that work on the front end. And so they're always chasing their tail.
no, it's spot on, and just how we started a little bit earlier in our conversation is having a vision of what you want, right? And so all those sorts of things sound like they sort of line up to it to stay focused, and so hopefully it makes it simple for people to understand if it's right for them anyway, right? So thanks a lot. So Jermaine, really appreciate it. Really great stuff. So glad to have met you, and I'll be tracking your traveling tour around the globe. So someday maybe I'll get there. Take care, man.
Ah,
Thank you.
awesome, man. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.